Hello and welcome to our Black Voice series. This is in conjunction with both San Diego State and AAAE. I'm very grateful to be in partnership with both Dr. Nola Butler-Bird and Dr. Lachey Collins. Welcome again to this very important series. It's important that we continue to listen to each other, to understand our own perspectives, but also in service of equitable conditions for all of our students. So before we begin, why is this topic important? So one of the reasons why this topic is so important is there's a lot of talk about equity right now, a lot of board resolutions. It is definitely a word that we're using very liberally across educational systems. And we're proposing that equity has to happen at every part of the organization. It is not just a student outcome, but it is how we teach adults, how we treat adults, how we teach adults, how we continue to develop principals, how we continue to develop board members, how we continue to ensure that student voice and parent voice is something that we listen to and have a platform for. So this platform is specific to our educators. We have representation from the K system all the way up into the university system with a little bit of everything here in San Diego. I'm very proud to introduce all of the members. Now, all their extended bios will be available at our website, but I have a short bio for all of them. So I want to welcome Dr. Regina Brandon, who is an associate professor of special education at San Diego State University and the coordinator for preliminary special education and mild moderate credential program. Her main research agenda at San Diego State continues to center around identifying and addressing the alienation of culturally and linguistically diverse parents from their children's educational environments, as well as evaluating the outcomes and the successful inclusion of students with disabilities into general education. And what an important perspective to have, not just from the university level, but also with that lens. Dr. Fakima Mayasa is professor and chair of the Black Studies at San Diego Mesa College. She specializes in the relationship between cultural identity development, STEAM and STEM education as a transformational learning process. As an educator, community activist, and equity advocate for over 30 years, she has dedicated her life to using education as a catalyst for change through personal development and improvement of the social, political, and economic status of African diasporan communities. Dr. Makiva, sorry, I love Dr. Makiva, so I'm sorry that I only said it that way. Dr. Makiva Jones, an associate teaching professor in the Education Studies Department at UC San Diego, researches educational equity, urban school reform, student engagement, youth voice, and transitions to college. For more than 20 years, she has collaborated on county-wide K-12 projects that serve students of color in under-resourced neighborhoods. Deborah Maxey. Deborah Maxey is California Student Aid Commissioner, so Commissioner Maxey has more than 44 years experience as a teacher, counselor, and administrator at the elementary, middle, and high school levels. In 2018, she was selected by Assemblymember Dr. Shirley Weber as the Woman of the Year for the 79th Assembly District. Tamara Allen. Tamara Allen is the principal of Lemon Grove Academy Middle School, has more than 23 years of experience in Southeast San Diego and the surrounding communities. A RISE Leadership Fellow and a board member, she advocates for the equitable rights of children who are historically underrepresented. Dr. Mark Jeffers is an English teacher at Mount Miguel High School and adjunct professor at Miramar College, currently serves as founding coordinators of Mount Miguel's Matador Early College Academy. He has also worked with young people through the California Kings County Probation Department, which spawned his desire to help young people excel, fulfill their dreams. Nalika Faye Watson is a high school teacher. She's also a coordinator of independent study at a local high school, has taught at the elementary, middle, and high school levels, has worked in the nonprofit sector, and served in leadership roles including department and team lead, mentor teacher, assistant principal, and director of school strategy logistics. And Ms. Christine Wooding, she is an elementary school teacher in La Mesa Spring Valley School District, has taught children from preschool through high school in both private and public schools across the county. She recently collaborated with the county on a 2-year equity project along with the resident leadership team at her school to ensure equitable practices in a safe learning environment for all students. Now that was just to give you the breadth of experience, the breadth of passion, and the breadth of dedication that exists on this panel for all of our students in San Diego County. I say this very seriously, but all of these educators and fellow colleagues that I love dearly are beacons of light for our students, and I want to make sure we're listening to their voice. We're listening to their experience because it's valuable for us to learn from them. Dr. Lachey Collins will be our MC for this event. The questions that we will be engaging our panel are these. And because we have lots of voices, I want to make sure that you see them and not the questions. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we can go ahead and get started with our event. Thank you.
All right, good evening. How's everyone doing? Meaning all of our panelists, how's everyone doing? We're doing pretty good?
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you everyone for joining us for this imperative event. This is an event that is highly needed for us to hear from all of you in regards to your overall experiences as being African-American educators located within San Diego County and at various education levels. And so the way the flow is going to be is you will have 1 minute to respond to each question. I will be timing it, and I will let you know when you hit 20 seconds or so. And after each panelist go ahead and give their overall response, then we will move forward with having some interactive engagement between our panelists and so forth in regards to that overall question. So are we ready to start? All right, let's start with question number 1. So racial equity work permeates the entire organization. How are our Black teachers experiencing our current school system? Meaning, how are you experiencing the school system based on your current position? I'm going to start with who's at the top of my grid. We're going to go to higher ed with Dr. Mark Jeffers.
How are you doing today? And I'm teaching primarily at high school. And the way that I experience is, as a Black male, is that it's only, the Black voices of a teacher is only wanted if there's a problem with Black children. Whereas if you look at San Diego County, with there being only possibly 4.3% of the students are of African American. So in most schools, if you're a teacher of color, if you're a Black teacher, then actually your voice is not needed to move the population in a direction. So therefore, in my school, I am fortunate where I have a population of Black students where I am listened to, and they come to me often because there are issues, right? Well, if there's not issues, well, then I am not necessary. I am only necessary to the point where I am fixing something that those that are not familiar with the culture, with our culture, our ethnicity, our past, our history, they cannot understand. So that is the only way that I see how the system where I am working is valuing me as a Black educator.
All right, thank you. And you gave a good response with 20 seconds left. Thank you so much. Let's go over to, let's see, higher ed, Regina Brandon. You are still muted.
That's really a good question, and I'm going to follow up with Dr. Jeffries. I guess my dilemma is, and it's something that actually keeps me up at night. We know that there are, like he said, 4.3% of African American students within the school system, but they represent over 50% of students that's referred to and receiving special education services. I've been at San Diego State for 17 years, and it's been about 10 or 11 years since I've had a Black teacher candidate to go through the program. So as we were talking about equity, I think it's very important, because we know that there's research out there that says whether it's a student with a disability or not, students need to see a teacher that looks like them by the 3rd grade.
10 seconds.
And okay, and it's just not happening. And so, 10 seconds. Okay, so as I go along this role, it's just very important for me to figure out what I need to do to ensure that if we're going to have true equity, that students are able to see teachers that look like them, and maybe even come from their own communities.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brandon. Let's go ahead and move over to Ms. Watson. Ms. Watson, you are going to also speaking from the high school experience.
Yes, and I'm new to San Diego, so that's worth noting. And so I've been experiencing the school systems from sort of an outsider perspective. I'm trying to be an insider, and I'm working on it because I do want to serve the community. But what I've found is that there are limited opportunities for leadership positions and limited opportunities in general. So sort of along the lines of what Dr. Brandon said, when I go into schools or when I look at school websites, I don't see people, and sometimes I don't see the children represented in what we're promoting is what San Diego's schools are. You know, I don't see pictures of the children. I don't see educators who look like me. And so that's something that I've been experiencing. But I'm also encouraged by things like this. I'm encouraged by the efforts that I see for us to move in a different direction and a better direction.
10 seconds.
That's it.
Thank you so much, Ms. Watson. Let me cancel that. And moving over to Yolanda. Hello, Yolanda. How are you?
I'm fine. So I work for the Corton Community Schools, so I see a lot of Black and brown children. I really never thought about equity when it comes to the educator experience, because in our mission statement, we have written about the equity for students. In our district, we do have a Black executive director, but there's no focus on what I can think of right now, at least when it comes to the Black educator. I agree with Dr. Brandon when she talks about students need to see people who look like them. I have many Black and brown children because unfortunately, they're in the court system. And so I think we need to empower teachers of color to go in and work with these students so they can see that they can do something different, that there is something else out there. So I'm hoping to learn where those doors are in this process.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing that information. Let's go to Christine Wooding. Hi, Christine. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing well. Thank you for having me tonight. To be honest, I'm lonely. It's hard being the constant advocate for diversity and upward momentum towards inclusion and cultural relevance. I'm lonely because, like what Dr. Jeffers was saying, is that we tend to be seen as statistically insignificant as people of color, and especially as Black people in the school systems, because, you know, with 4.3% in the school system, a lot of administrators kind of forget about us, and that hurts. I'm also hopeful because I do see that there's so much dialogue happening in our school systems and in our nation that we haven't seen since the 1990s. And I feel like it's almost as if people forgot about it until now. And the conversations are just now happening again, not just with people of color, but white teachers as well.
I absolutely agree with you on that. 100%. Let's see. We have a new administrator in Lemon Grove School District, Tamara Muhammad. If you could please answer that question. How are you experiencing our current school system? I know that you just moved over to Lemon Grove and you were recently within San Diego Unified. So you have two different districts that you can talk about.
Yeah, so I will say, let me say where I started from. I started from a school that was, say, about 85% African-American student population, and 85% of the teachers look like the students. So where I started from was an ideal situation for our students. However, when I transitioned into a district school, much like my cohorts have said, our representation dwindled. Our representation as educators and our representation definitely as the leaders of schools dwindled. In my journey to become an administrator, I was often told that I was not qualified enough. or I didn't have enough experience. Even when applying for vice principal positions, which is supposed to train you and give you the experience, I was told I was not experienced enough to be a vice principal. So in all of that, it did start to wear and tear on not my self-esteem, but how I felt I was qualified enough. I allowed other people to get in my brain and make me feel I wasn't qualified enough. And then as I transitioned into Lemon Grove School District, someone called and asked for me. So that made my whole self-esteem shoot up through the roof. I didn't apply at first. Someone called and asked for me. And based on my qualifications and based on my personality, they wanted me. So it allowed me now to see that I was that person that I always thought I was. And it reminded me, I should say, that I was that person I always was. Coming into the school district, I have been extremely welcomed by everyone, whether they look like me or not. But the instance I would like to speak on is there are people who reached out to me who work with me, who made the comment, we've never seen so much Black here ever. Because I've had family and friends coming by to congratulate me to see where I'm at. And they're like, we have never in our lives seen this much Black walk through this office. And that disheartened me, because when I look at the population of the school, it's Black and brown mostly. And so for them to never see representation walk through the door or to be in leadership, if I'm not mistaken, we're in Zoom, so I don't know my entire staff face to face yet, but I only have one African-American teacher in the entire school, and that's disheartening as well.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that information. And I'm sure that we have other panelists that will like to continue this dialogue between each other after we hear from Commissioner Maxey, who was a retired educator and counselor and now serves on the state commission for the student aid for the state of California. Commissioner Maxey.
Yes, and thank you for having me this evening also. As I was listening to the current workforce, it brought back memories of when I was active in schools. But since my retirement, I have experienced kind of the same thing in substituting, where I would show up to a school and they would be so surprised. Wow, she's Black. It's like, am I such a novelty item here? Immediately, as it was mentioned, I think by Dr. Jeffers, that our voice is needed when the children are in trouble. And I know specifically at a school, that's when I was there as a counselor for the day or for 2 days. And they came to me and asked if I would help them with a particular child. And this is a child that the school had been trying to get to come to school for months. Mm-hmm. And
10 seconds.
Mm-hmm. And so just in being there and being a face for the children was enlightening to me. It was a pleasure to be there so that they could see someone that looked like them and make them feel welcome where they should have been welcomed all along.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I know that Commissioner Maxey, you started a program called Diamonds in the Rough at Crawford.
Yes.
High School. Is that
Yes.
program still in existence? And can you kind of share briefly in regards to what that program consists of?
Just very briefly, when I started at Crawford, I was there as a counselor for 20 years, 5 years. I was there 25 total years. The last 5, I was the vice. But during my early years there, many of the Black kids were fighting. One particular young lady was like on her 3rd strike. She was on her way out of the system. And she got into a fight, was brought into my office. I pulled her into the office and I said, no, we're not going to have you put out of this school. And decided at that moment that I would start a club on campus. Even though my plate was, quote, full, I decided to start this club, and it was to enhance the education of the African-American student. Anyone could join, of course, like any other school group, but our focus was to learn the Black National Anthem, to learn about Kwanzaa, to learn about ourselves. And we had other students at the school because it's multicultural. that they had friends. Can they come to the club meeting? Sure, but they're not going to learn French in here. They're not going to learn Spanish in here. They're going to learn about us. And so they also learned about our culture, and the kids were so proud, and it continued until I left. And yes, there is a counselor there at Crawford who does what I call a mini version of it. He still continues it, and we still give kente cloth because I get that from Chicago when I'm home, and make sure the graduates have their kente cloth and those kinds of things. So yes, it is still going.
Thank you so much for sharing that background information. We now have Dr. Fakima Mayasa on the line. Hello, how are you? Dr. Mayasa, can you hear me? Okay. Well, as soon as she is able to come back on the line, we will get her overall response to that question. But would anyone like to respond to each other's comments in regards to the overall question based on everyone's experience within the current school system?
I just wanted to add that I want to say first that I'm glad to be here because I'm learning, and I'm happy to know that my experience is not unique. But also back to Dr. Jeffers' point about being a touch point or a point person for students. I found in my position, because I right now coordinate independent study, I'm also that for parents. And a lot of the African-American parents, they come and have, when they have an issue or they have a question and they see me, like I think Dr. Maxey said, sometimes when people, say, hey, I want to sign up for this, and I come out, they look surprised, like, oh. And I'm like, hey, it's me, Miss Watson. And everybody's just like, oh, I can't, oh, okay. But I agree. But I also have that same kind of rapport with parents, African-American parents as well, in addition to children.
I would like to add to that with the parent part. What I found over the years was it was kind of sad that parents had to wait for that one Black person to show up, and they should have been welcomed all along. And that's something that I know a lot of the schools are working on and have been working on, and some do a better job than others, where they may not have an African-American face available, but those that don't look like us should still be welcoming to any parent, because we have to remember, if it were not for the students, we would not have a job. And we sometimes forget that, as if, we're doing them a favor. They're actually doing us a favor. They're sending us their children, and should welcome each and every parent regardless. Yes, some are a little hard to handle at times, but that's okay. Some of us are rough around the edges also. And so I just think schools should really do a better job, whether they have one that looks like all of their parents in the office, which that's not going to happen. You're going to have one or two missing, you're missing a language or something, but still put forth that effort and really be welcoming to our parents and serve the parents.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much for sharing that information. I just wanted to see if we have Dr. Mayasa. Can you hear us, Dr. Mayasa? Hi, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
I am doing pretty good.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry for the technical difficulties.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to go ahead and get your overall response to the first question that was asked. And that was basically asking, how are you experiencing our current school system before we move on to our second question?
Okay, so would you like me to address that at the community college level?
Yes, please. And you have 1 minute to address that.
Well, there's a lot of change actually going on right now, especially in light of the social dynamics that are going on. A lot of our students are very concerned, different from at the compulsory ed level. We have a good mixture of people. We probably have the largest mixture between high school students and returning students who are working professionals. And so that being said, I think what happens at our level is going to say a lot about how that spills over into the community at large, since we probably have the largest representation of the community. And so it's quite a challenge that we're going to have to face. We were just talking about the ethnic studies, a resolution, as you know, Dr.
You
Whitmer talked about a
have
resolution.
10 seconds left.
Okay, so Dr. Whitmer talked about a resolution that was just passed at the state level for the CSUs. And so we're trying to be in alignment with that. And so there's quite a discussion about that and what that will mean.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mayasa, for your response. Because you brought up ethnic studies, how about we move on to that question? Both ethnic studies and anti-racism training have been prominent topics currently right now. So what are your thoughts and how are your school systems currently responding to that? I want to start with Christine Wooding.
So in elementary school, the curriculum that we have in our district represents our students. As they read through stories, work through problems, and master the standards, they see pictures of students who look like them with names like theirs. They see a wide range of cultures and languages and learn history of our country through multiple perspectives, not just one-sided. Along with this, my school district recognizes that the schools are not perfectly following equitable practices, but we are striving towards making the learning environment better. We've recently received a grant to work on this very thing, hearing our educators, recognizing how we are affecting our students negatively, and sharing our struggles and successes with other teachers. In those 2 years, I really got to share my thoughts, feelings, and beliefs with my colleagues back at school and help them process their perspective of education system while we looked at the practices of our classrooms. So in a broader respect, we've been recognized several times for this good work.
Christine, which school district are you with again?
La Mesa Spring Valley.
Mesa Spring Valley. Okay, thank you so much for sharing that. Dr. Mayasa, can you also answer that question in regards to the ethnic studies and the anti-racism training, please?
So I work at San Diego Mesa College, and there's been for several years efforts to be what they call the College of Equity and Excellence. And so that's no stranger to our campus and even to our district. We have a wonderful chancellor, Dr. Constance Carroll. So that work has been happening. I will say that we are being challenged to increase that because, again, with the social dynamics that are going on, we have a lot more students who are not just taking ethnic studies classes for a requirement, but because they want to understand what's happening in the larger society. And so that will require more training. The downside to that is that the current economic situation is putting a significant damper on that. And so, one of the greater challenges will be not the demand, but meeting that demand based upon a cost, right, as one element, certainly not the only one.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I would like to hear from Makiva Jones as well. Can you please let us know your overall response to how your school system is currently responding, because you're at UCSD, and that has a very diverse population and a huge campus and a lot of interesting mechanisms taking place. So how is your responding, your campus currently responding to this?
Yes, UCSD is very diverse. It just depends what you mean by diversity. If you're talking about African-American students, and that is definitely not the case, definitely have less than 3%. But, this summer there was a series of, and I need to say I'm having some internet issues, so I apologize if I freeze up or keep cutting out. But this summer there was a series of panels that had readings and materials attached to them, and it was all about educating campus and the larger public about anti-Blackness and racism, anti-racism. It was called the Chancellor's 21-Day Anti-Racism Challenge. I believe all the materials and all the videos are still on the UCSD website. Some of the forums had over 1,000 participants, so it was very well received. And I think it was a really good start. The material was really good. I was really impressed with that. I know there are other places on campus that are trying to get something going. There's a unit that does professional development around teaching for all faculty and graduate students. They're starting to organize a year-long anti-racism series. So I've been on this campus for a really long time, 20 years. This is the first time ever that these kinds of conversations have been explicit and promoted across the campus. So I find that hopeful for now.
And we definitely have to keep this going. We have to keep the conversation going. I know that in the beginning I said I was going to ask every panelist, but I'm looking at the clock. We are already at 6:30. Can you believe it? We're already at 6:30. So I'm just going to pick another person to respond to that question. But then in the end, if there's anyone who feels as if they need to state something, by all means, please do so. So we had our 4-year. We had two of our, we had a 4-year, we had community college and so forth. So I want to get the high school perspective. The high school perspective will come from Dr. Jeffers. And I am wondering how the current school system that you're in is responding to the ethnic studies and the anti-racism training.
Well, unfortunately, it is something that is top down. And I mean top down, it's not even from the district level. I believe my district, it probably would not even be a conversation if it wasn't coming from outside of the district. The population is we probably have a dominant Latinx population, just as most of California, but the Black population is very small. So when we talk about ethnic and racial issues, it is not something that is coming from the inside out, and that is the problem. So since it's coming from the outside in, it is difficult for these conversations to take root. Whereas your average high school teacher is very concerned about teaching their discipline, where they come to teach their discipline and all of the things that are put upon them to discuss or to present.
10 seconds.
Present forward becomes a distraction. They feel it's a distraction to that, especially if they're in a school that doesn't have a dominant culture or dominant ethnic culture that is Black or Latinx.
Thank you so much for sharing that information. I know, Yolanda, you are with JCCS. And so it is important for us to know how the juvenile court system is also responding to this particular situation.
Well, right now we've been teaching distantly because of COVID, but I teach a lot through literature. So my kids get to see themselves through literature and all those kind of things, and we get a lot of discussion. But with the current climate, we need more, because my kids are the ones that are out there that are involved in all of this. And so I think dialogue should be made. But a lot of times, because we're teaching inside the court, I think sometimes that the district is kind of stand backish because they don't want to offend probation when educating the kids. But I know with a lot of my students, the probation officers that are inside, they look at them totally different than the officers that they see outside, because they have a relationship with the people inside. Okay. And so I really think that the conversation should be made, because they are the ones that are encountering officers on the street. They know what's going on. We can't hide it from them because they're a part of what's going on. So I think a dialogue should be made, more of an effort of a dialogue for my population.
Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you. So I know that this topic is saying both ethnic studies and anti-racism training, but I want to know you guys' overall thoughts on AB 331 being vetoed by Governor Brown. AB 331 is the pupil instruction for high school graduation requirements, and that is the ethnic studies requirement. And I'm just wondering how anyone feels about that not being a state mandate, so it was left up to the current district. So do you guys feel as if any district is going to take that up? And this is primarily for the K-12 aspect.
I'd like to address that, if I may, really quickly. As someone who teaches and receives the high school students, every year we have a growing number of them. Oftentimes they will say to us, how come we didn't learn this before? How come we didn't learn this in high school? How come we didn't learn this before we got here? And so many of the students themselves are very, they're distraught. It doesn't make them feel like they've got what they needed to get in order for them to avoid some of the decisions that they make, to view themselves and their relationship with their community better. This work is essential, and it has to, and I wanted to, if I could, just tie this really briefly to the last question, and that's this. This training cannot just be lip service. It's not just going to a meeting, getting some credits for a couple of hours. The work is really connected to, when you're dealing with the hard issues, how do we equitably deal with our students and what happens in their lives if people do not know who they are and know how to take and interact with them. Last point is this: teachers can't teach who teachers don't know. And we've just had comments about, the relationships, and it's the relationships that will make the difference. And students feeling that they're heard, they're understood, they're appreciated, and they're valued.
Excellent point. I could not have said it any better than what you just said. So thank you so much for sharing that, Dr. Mayasa. Is there anyone else who would like to respond to the veto of AB 331 for ethnic studies requirement for K-12? All right.
And maybe I'm late on this, but it's my understanding when I read about it that Governor Newsom vetoed it specifically because he thought that the template for the curriculum that was developed so far left out certain groups, and he wanted a revision so that the state curriculum is more inclusive. That was what I had read about why the veto happened. So if that's true, that's important to know, because it says that he still supports it, but what he was given was not as inclusive as he thought that it should be. So
I want to briefly just touch on it, and then we'll move on to the next question, because it also aligns with AB 1460, which was passed for the higher ed for the CSUs to mandate a 3-unit requirement for ethnic studies. The AB 331 curriculum, that too tied to 1460 to only highlight the key ethnic groups, which was the Chicano studies and Black studies and then the API community and so forth. So it was those 4 key ethnic groups, and others wanted to add into that. That was not a part of the original format of ethnic studies. And so we wanted to keep ethnic studies of what it was. And now we have everyone else that want to come in and be a part of ethnic studies, but they don't align with what the original development of was for ethnic studies. And so, yes?
And Lachey, if I could just add to that, there's a reason why those are called the 4 core. The relationship between those 4 core and their development of American culture and society is different than the other groups that benefited by the struggles that these 4 core groups have had from the very beginning. So there's not, one, it's not equitable standing, and 2, those 4 core had forced migrations, enslavement, and other things different than other groups who haven't had those experiences, number 1, and who, again, have a different kind of relationship. Now, that doesn't mean people haven't contributed to America. We're talking about a very different experience as this 4 core. And that does make a difference. Dr. Weber said before on Wednesday that when there was an opportunity for people to come on board and be supportive of this, nobody wanted it until after the law was passed. Now everybody wants to jump on board. So, and I believe in the conversation that was happening earlier, there's no crime in taking, and Miss Deborah Brown said, to take and value yourself. As she was talking about the students, you're going to come, you're going to learn about these groups, because we learn about other people all the time, and they should learn about these 4 core groups and their experiences, not just the hardships, but the contributions that they have made to American culture and society that are very, very different than the traditional narrative.
Thank you so much for stating that, Dr. Mayasa. Thank you. All right. So, the next question. And then I have to say that the ethnic studies conversation is deep, and it's a heavy conversation. And it has extended beyond any direction that I could think of at this current point. And I do hope that we can do what we can to implement ethnic studies in every school district within San Diego County. I do hope that we have qualified teachers to be able to teach the ethnic studies component for the K-12 curriculum. And you know, I just need us to have that buy-in as we have to address our cultural competencies, our microaggressions, and so forth moving forward as we're dealing with our African American students. With that being said, I want to know, where are we holding space for this type of dialogue? Meaning, where are we as African Americans holding the space for this type of dialogue for us to have a conversation about us being Black educators? You know, do we feel as if we are being heard as Black educators in our school districts, in our CSUs, in our community college districts? Do you feel as if you guys are being heard as Black educators in your current line of work, even through the teachers union? Are you being heard? I'm going to go ahead and start with Commissioner Maxey. I know that you are retired, but you are also now at the state level dealing with the Student Aid Commission. Mm-hmm. And I'm just wondering, is there a voice for our Black students, our Black educators? I mean, me knowing you, I know that you are bringing the voice, girl. You're bringing the voice.
Well,
you know, how was that resonating up there?
Being on the commission has been an education for at first, when I was first appointed, I wasn't sure where I actually fit in, even though the Student Aid Commission deals with financial aid, and that starts at the high school level, which was where my home was. But the others at the commission had these titles. So all of a sudden I had to rethink who I was. And I had to stand and say, if I don't do my job, all of you at the college level, one was a senator, they're deans, they're presidents of universities. If you look at the bios of the commissioners, there are 15 of us, 2 of which are students. They have titles and all of that. I finally had to say by my second meeting, but I have a place at this table, because if I, as a high school person, don't prepare the kids to go on to college, all of the other people on the commission are out of work. The only ones that I've helped, 2 kids that, or the 2 students that are on the commission that had to prepare to do their financial aid. We are a diverse group. Now, more than when I first got on the commission. I'm in my second term, so I did 4 years. I'm on the second set of 4. And we have gelled very nicely. And we are looking out for the students of color more, I believe, where we are really asking for data to tell us we as a commission need to be putting our resources and legislation to work us, or how can we work with them to help our students move on beyond high school, because we all know education is what will make a difference in their life.
Right.
And if we not help them, we have done them a disservice. You know, we've co-created and we have not helped. We have to continue to help, which is why I enjoy the work, even being retired. I'm not dead yet, so I still feel I have energy and passion to help many more to come.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Maxey. Makiva Jones, Ms. Jones.
Thank you. So I have a little bit of a different take on, do you feel heard as a Black educator? And I really have, this is really in the last 6 months. I've been at UCSD for 20 years, so you have to ask me this question multiple times. So, you know, in education, it's very common to talk about the best kind of education as student-centered, right? Where teachers are putting the needs of their students at the center. So when the protests started happening around police murdering Black people, the focus in universities and likely K-12, the messaging was always about, you know, what do students need to cope with the chaos? Absolutely the right message. However, I was frustrated that no one thought to ask, what do Black faculty need to also cope with the chaos, but continue our professional responsibilities. If you are a professor like me or a teacher like me, maybe you teach ethnic studies or you teach, English classes where there's a lot of content by people of color, you're teaching subjects that explain why this country sees us as property and as a threat. And yet I have this professional obligation to keep teaching and doing it well and putting my students' needs first, but it's traumatic for me because now I have to cut myself off from my emotions and my feelings to do my professional job. And nobody thought about that. Nobody asked, nobody cared. So I'm really hoping that part of this tonight is also about what do we need as Black educators, from our institutions and from our community to make sure, like our students, that we too are okay.
Thank you so much, Ms. Jones, for sharing that information. I'm going to open it up to the other panelists. Is there anyone else who would like to respond to that question? I see Dr. Brandon. So I'm going to go in order, and I am timing. We are now at 6:46, so I'm trying to keep us on track. I'm going to keep the timer on, so when you hear the little ring, that means you got to try to close out. But I'm going to go with Dr. Branding, Ms. Wooding, Ms. Watson, and then Dr. Jeffers. Okay? All right, we're going to go in that order. So, Dr. Branding, you're on.
Well, I totally agree with Dr. Jones. It's almost like Michelle Obama said, it's low-grade depression. It's what we are dealing with on a daily basis in these institutions, these racist institutions. And so I do find solace in the fact that at San Diego State, we do have an organization called Black Women in Academia. And it's a place where we can get together and talk from all Black faculty, women from across the university. Sometimes I think we need to start putting more focus on the trauma and the racism that Black women face every single day on these institutions. A lot of times we spend so much time talking about Black men, and I'm not trying to say that it doesn't happen. I have 6 brothers, so I know. But we need to also make sure that we're understanding that this trauma, this racism is real, and we need to really, really start trying to address these issues and not forget about since we came to this country, the institutionalized racism that Black women face on a daily basis. So with that being said, we do have BWA. We try to get together. And I mean, there are Black faculty, women at that campus. Some of the issues, they're talking about leaving. So we're talking about recruiting and retaining, but you're not making it an environment in which people or Black women really want to stay to try to educate their students. So it's really a lot. And I just want to make sure that we're understanding, because I got so many emails after George Floyd saying, oh, I don't understand from faculty member, from students, what it's like to be Black. I'm not asking you to understand what it's like to be Black, because you don't know. But I'll stop there. But just to remember that we as Black women, we're strong, we're resilient, but we need to make sure that we're having our needs met. And okay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brendan. I just want us to be mindful that we have to keep our responses condensed, concise, as we're now approaching 6:50 and we only have 10 minutes left in this segment. And so I want to do what I can to get everyone else's response and move to the last few questions, okay? So Ms. Wooding, if we can try to keep that to our minute, I would appreciate it. Go ahead.
Absolutely. I have to brag a little bit on my school district because number one, I chose to work with La Mesa Spring Valley for lots of reasons. I don't have time now, but basically like my school district has 2 Black women in it, including the president, Dr. Emma Turner, who's been working for over 20 years creating equitable systems for students. I would encourage everyone to learn more about Dr. Turner's work because I don't have time to go into it now. But when I do go to board meetings, the members approach me, talk to me, ask me questions about my experience at my school. They visit my classroom. They are active members of my school community. And even though I'm just a regular teacher, they take time to listen to me. So with a working space like that, how could I not feel heard?
All right, 10 seconds left, but I'm going to go ahead and move over to Ms. Watson and then Mr. Jeffers. Go ahead, Ms. Watson.
Hi. So when this question came up, the first thing that came to my mind was Paul Laurence Dunbar, We Wear the Mask. And interestingly enough, I had a conversation with a friend of mine who's in corporate, who was giving some feedback about how when he's in a meeting like this, he's not friendly enough. And at some point in the conversation, I said, well, you could be a little, and he said, you know what, but I'm not even being myself. And I thought about that, and he's working for a large bank, and they're having equity conversations. And I said, you should probably bring that up in your equity meeting, because he's basically saying that I can't be my full self. So then how are you going to ask me to add another personality? Because as a Black person, I don't feel comfortable being who I would be in a forum like this, around people who look like me. And so and then just to add my Black nerd perspective to it, it reminded me of X-Men: The First Class, when Magneto tells Mystique, if you're spending half your energy trying to fit in, then you're not going to be able to, work to your full capacity or have your full power. And so that's what this question made me think of.
Woo! The power of this panel right now. Yes. Preach. Okay, I'm hoping that Dr. Jeffers, are you ready to bring us home on this one? Because I'm over here getting chills. I'm going, yes. I'm over here snapping. You hear that? Let's go. All right. Dr. Jeffers.
First thing, I was fortunate enough at the school where I am in that I had a couple of colleagues that were Black. But however, especially being an English teacher in high school, most of the time, being the department chair, being on committees, when I walk into a room, I'm the only Black male in the room, right? So for me to have a Black voice, I have to have a voice first, because what is perceived to be a Black voice coming from a Black male is somewhat intimidating, right? So I have to choose my words carefully at all times. So first I have to create a voice, right, before I can then I can start throwing the Black voice out there when the time is appropriate and necessary. I had to build a lot of cachet within my school, within my district, whereas now when I speak, people will listen to me. Yeah, and that took, right now, it's 16 years to do that. To do that, we look at this panel right now, I'm the only Black male here. And that's usually quite often the way it is when a Black male educator in K-12, we're also an isolated group.
Yeah, I mean, how many of us on this call feel as if we're constantly the token person? Mm-hmm. And you get tired of being the token person? The one person that's speaking up for all Black people. And you're like, that is not me. If you want to hear from our people, then you need to have a conversation with us. We are true intellectual people, and we can have a good, fruitful dialogue to be able to move forward in an educational dialogue. So sometimes they be like, you guys can't talk right and so forth. No, we are some intelligent people. We built this country on our backs, and they owe us that much respect. And that takes me to, obviously, a bill that was passed, AB 3121 for reparations throughout California. Okay. So
Shay, can I just make one comment on that before you move to the next question?
Yes, ma'am.
Just really, really briefly. And that is this. I'm grateful for this dialogue because it's evidence that we have to create our own healing.
Yes.
When the grassroots have showed us, the voices of the people have showed us that, as educators, we're preparing students to go out in the world and things like that. And what it's showing us is that the system is not preparing them for everything, because the voices are telling us that there's things that are missing. And so as Black educators, I know on our campus, the Black faces of the faculty become the first one, because the rest of the faculty are saying, well, we don't know how to deal with this. So on top of our own frustrations, on top of trying to deal with our students' frustrations, is that added I don't want to say burn it, but it's an added focus. Well, can you fix it? Can you, tell us how to do that, or tell the students or whatever? But it's always about, the question isn't ever, can we do it? The question is always, how bad do we want to do it?
Right.
And so I'll end my comment by saying it will take forums like this for us to come back and be healed by our own, who understand, who we can take the mask off, who we can be ourselves with, so that when we go into these other spaces, we can bring our authentic selves into those spaces and be heard. So I just want to say kudos and thanks for this opportunity, so that we can build momentum off of this and going back into our respective workplaces and spaces, knowing that we have the support of the community and other professionals who do understand and who can hear us, who we can talk to about, and then brainstorm with ideas on how to take and deal with things on our respective campuses.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mayasa. I'm just gonna go right here and I'm gonna go Ashe. I do have a question for everyone, though. Should affirmative action be restored in California? That's the question at the heart of Proposition 16 on the November statewide ballot. The measure brings back affirmative action to California, allowing race, ethnicity, and gender to once again be considered in admissions to state colleges, universities, and state contracts and public jobs. So I'm asking you, should affirmative action be restored in the state of California? And, your overall stance on how do you feel about Proposition 16, as that is a bill that, if it's approved, it would appeal Proposition 209, which voters in the state of California approved in 1996. And that measure prohibited consideration of race, ethnicity, and gender in those public fields that I indicated. And so as we're looking at it at education, what is your overall stance? Once again, should affirmative action be restored in California by moving forward with overturning Prop 209 with Proposition 16 that's on the ballot? I'm going to open it up to anyone. If anyone would like to go ahead and respond to that first. Okay. Miss Muhammad.
Well, first I'm going to say yes. Vote yes on Proposition 16. My thought process behind it is, when it was repealed in 1996, the thought was that we had it right. We figured it out. The code was created, we did it. So we don't need to be forced to be diverse, because we're diverse. This is California. That is what the thought was in 1996. Well, apparently we got that wrong. And apparently the people who are still in charge, the gatekeepers, are still preventing people of color, people of different sexualities, people of different gender identities, whatever intersection it is, they are still being the gatekeepers of them and preventing all of us from having a voice, from gaining employment, from finding housing. I mean, it digs so deep as to what this proposition means. And we wouldn't have to sit here and have this conversation if it wasn't a problem. Like, why do we have to have an entire panel to say, hey, I have a voice. Hey, I'm an educator. Look at me. Like, that shouldn't even be an issue, but it is. And until we can do it intrinsically, then I'm okay with putting a law in place that says, if you're not going to do it on your own, let me help you do it until you get it right.
Thank you so much, Chairman, for sharing that. And this question was not on you guys' list, but I chose to ask that as we're talking about teacher recruitment and how our school district is actually so-called listening to our voice or not listening to our voice, how we feel accepted within our current school system when we talk about ethnic studies, when we talk about cultural competency and the microaggressions, the diversity departments that are being implemented, it's diversity, equity, and also inclusion departments that are being implemented. How many students are being enrolled into our four-year universities that are of African descent, the number of students that are going to our community colleges. So as we look at all of that, and then think about COVID-19, okay? And the impact COVID-19 is having on the Black community. And I'm connecting all of that to Prop 16, you know, looking at Prop 209. That's why I am posing this question to see where some of you may stand with this, because if you want to recruit teachers, this is the one way to do that, because you can't have a program that solely recruit Black people right now, currently under Prop 209 within the state of California. So I'm just wondering, is there any other response or feedback to Prop 16? You know, should we move forward with that? If so, please, by all means, say yes, wave your hand, or do whichever. But if you are opposed to that, then, you know, then state your case. I see Makiva is like, yes. You know, thank you, Ms. Watson, Dr. Brandon. So if we're going to move forward, thank you, you know, Commissioner, if we're going to move forward with making sure that we have things and systems and policies and so forth put in place to recruit people of color, to educate our students, both male and female at all levels, this is one thing that needs to be passed. It's one thing that needs to be implemented. So we are all saying vote yes on Prop 16?
Yes. Yes. And I'd like to speak to that, if I can, for just a second. I think on that note, you're absolutely right in the sense that this is really even bigger than what you've just described, Lachey, in the sense that, and we can look at the current Supreme Court nominee justice, and the whole idea that Donald Trump, for example, has been strategically putting conservative judges in place in other spaces. And so, yes, Prop 16 needs to be passed so that as we are educating the minds, the bodies, the decision makers of tomorrow, that we can also strategically, as the people of color are a growing majority in the state of California, put people in place that look like us in decision-making positions so that the programs that are needed to bring equity, excellence, sense of well-beingness, sense of pride and things like that can not only exist, but that they can be funded and that they can be enduring. And it's going to take people long after we are gone, right, who will be in place, who are in line to continue this effort. And it doesn't happen just on its own. Listen, the history of America should tell us, right? If we really know the history of America, then we know that it's not going to help on it. It's not going to do it on its own. It needs to be, we need to make it happen. And passing Prop 16 will be a step in the right direction. And that there are people who understand that. Those people who are in power and position right now, they understand that having that door open again will be a significant social change. But it's time for change. And it's time for us to make that change. And we can't afford to wait for other people to get a conscience. We have to take and do it like we've done it before. And generally speaking, and I'll end with this, ACR 71 was, and Lachey, you know, was unanimously passed by the state of California legislatures. It said that many of them had all taken ethnic studies classes and had these experiences that they felt made them better individuals and public servants. So usually whatever we do, everybody benefits from. It's never just something that we individually benefit from as a people, because that's the nature of who we are.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Dr. Mayasa, for once again preaching. How about that? And also teaching us in regards to how things are currently moving forward within the state of California, but also speaking from your Black studies and ethnic studies background at the community college level. I do have a question from the audience that I would like to pose to Dr. Brandon and also Dr. Jones. And this ties to the Prop 209 and Prop 16, component. If, let's say this doesn't pass, okay? How are the 4 years recruiting professors of color? What work is being done, to absolutely recruit professors of African descent? This is for Dr. Brandon and Dr. Jones.
I can say there's a new initiative that came out from the UC Office of the President. There are 10 UC campuses. It's called the Advancing Faculty Diversity Initiative, and each of the 10 UC campuses can apply to get funding, and the grant is designed to specifically recruit faculty of color in certain departments. So at UCSD, I was a part of writing that is Black faculty in STEM departments. And so we got the grant, and the Chancellor is committed to hiring, I think, up to 10 to 12 Black faculty or diverse faculty whose sole research is on issues of health, medicine, and the environment as they relate to the African American community. So this year and next year, we'll be working on doing that. Whether or not other universities are doing that, I don't know. I don't hear a lot of major initiatives in California specifically for Black faculty. So I'm hoping that this new opportunity through the Office of the President, I'm hoping that it's the first of many, because there needs to be many happening simultaneously.
Okay, Dr. Brandon?
Yeah, so it's quite interesting because I know that there is a big push to say that we need, we know that there should be more Black faculty or faculty of color on campus. What we're trying to do, and I can say in the College of Ed and in our department, there was a search. We had a search that was really trying to hire 2 professors in our department, and I made sure that I was on that search committee, and I tried to recruit, but it's really difficult because, even for the Black faculty that interviewed, San Diego is not the most friendly, I won't say friendly, but economical place to live. It's very expensive. And so when you have individuals that come to the university and they may really want to come here, but when you start thinking about, I have to move my family, I have kids, it's really expensive. And so I think we need to, as it relates to the housing. And so we had a search. I made sure that the 2 Blacks interviewed, but when it came down to offering, just because of the economics of the area, they decided not to come. I know that there is a lot of training that anyone that is the chair of a search committee, they need to go through the unconscious bias workshop, because we know how those biases exist when it comes to hiring and people of color, and making sure that the search committee is really prepared to address some of these issues. But from what I have noticed, what I have noticed is that when it comes down to actually bringing people, hiring people, people of color, they usually turn San Diego State down because of the economics and how important it is to actually live in San Diego.
Yes.
Lachey, I'd like to ask a question. In this recruitment, are these for tenure positions or just lecturers? Because when we talk about recruiting and stabilizing your universities with people of color, are they tenure tracks?
They're tenure track.
And they are tenure track.
Yes.
Yes.
If we have, we hire lecturers too, and which is also a big push to make sure that we are hiring lecturers of color, which seems to be easier because many lecturers are already employed other places and they'll come to San Diego State and teach in the evening time. But the positions that we're talking about as far as San Diego State, those are tenure track positions.
And Lachey, if I could add something else to this, just that's an important conversation.
This would be the last response to this.
It's not just about the hiring of them. That's one issue. The second part of that is, what do we need to do to help retain them and to give them the support to make it through their tenure, process? Because for those who do make it, at least get offered the position, they go through a lot to even try to be sustained. There's a lot of isolation, especially if you're talking about in STEM fields. So depending on the discipline that you're talking about, there may not be other Black faculty available to them. They may have very different experiences than their European counterparts. And so therefore, Black faculty associations and other types of things will be critical so that they don't lose their minds, right? While they're trying to acquire tenure. So the conversation has to be a full package. Certainly the recruitment and hiring is one component, being able to afford to be here, but also what does it take for them to not only get their tenure, but to be willing to stay? Because when there are people who would tenure and then give it up because of the racism and the things that they experience. And so then there's a loss there. So, I would encourage us to think long-term in terms of this recruitment and sustainability effort, and then how do we develop networks between our respective institutions that can help each other, regardless of which institutional level we are at.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mayasa. Actually, let me go ahead and give a round of applause to everybody who has been on this panel to share their overall insight. You guys have given us a lot of fruitful information. I appreciate you guys all being your authentic self and sharing your overall experience with us. The one thing that I do want to say is that this is something that is necessary. We need this to bring everyone together. And when I'm saying bring everyone together, it isn't a K-12 problem. It isn't just a higher ed problem. It's an educational system problem. And we need to come together to make sure that we close the opportunity gap. I don't want to say the achievement gap. I want to say opportunity gap, because there's a lot of opportunities that are being missed by our African-American students. And so it is important that we continue to have dialogue such as this. But I also want to state that as the president of the Association of African-American Educators, everybody on this line is an African-American educator, yes or no? Okay. If you are not a member, you need to become a member. Because this is where we can have this type of conversation and be able to stand as one unit to move forward. Even though we have some people who are on the line that are union reps and so forth. I get that sometimes the union have to do what the union have to do. But however, you have your own conscience. You know how you want to move and how you want to shape. But it is important for all of us to come together. And if we are going to be able to advocate for students of color and teachers of color, we have to stop having our own individual agenda. Now we need to bring all these agendas together. That's the community colleges, that's the four-year colleges, and that's the K-12. And right now, we're not doing that here within San Diego County. And it needs to happen within San Diego County. So I am encouraging you all to join the Association of African American Educators, so that way our voice as Black people when the education system can be even stronger, not only at our local level, but at our state level. Okay? The way to join will be, honestly, to go to the website. It's AAAE, so AAAE, sandiego.org. And then you can click on membership and become a member. We are not only a localized K-12 organization. No, honey. It's labeled Association of African American Educators of San Diego County. We are it. And I appreciate partnering with the San Diego County Office of Education and bringing us on as they have a Black Voices series that will be continuing. So this is just one of many. And bringing on San Diego State University with Dr. Nola Butler-Bird, who has been so awesome throughout this process, as bringing on some of our higher ed speakers today. And I wanted to make sure that we have a partnership with San Diego State University. And I know that we have Dr. Mayasa on the line. I'm hoping that we continue the partnership with our K-12 component. And I just wanted to say in our closing too, is that as we are all coming together, the County Office of Education it has adopted the AAAE blueprint, the blueprint of the African American Student Achievement. That blueprint, even though there will be other components of it, meaning that there will be the blueprint for African American Student Achievement, the blueprint for Latinx community and the API community and so forth. The County Office of Education has decided to adopt this blueprint that was drafted back in 2010 by AAAE to move forward to ensure that our students have what they need in order for them to move forward to higher ed. And we have this partnership. I'm excited about it. Bobby, she is the new equity director. Congratulations, Bobby, for being here and being able to pull everything together for us. But we need everyone that's here on this line, and we need everyone else that is currently watching. We need you to help make a difference. Being here and cheering up and so forth is great, but we need your body. We need your voice. We need your action. And so if you are interested in joining AAAE and joining our task force throughout the county, right, Bobby? Our task force to educate and also move forward with our blueprint for African American Student Achievement, by all means, email me at San Diego AAAE@gmail.com. But you can also email Fabiola. Fabi, if you want to indicate your overall email, please, for those.
Yes, my email, and you can access all of this information on our San Diego County Office of Education Equity webpage. And this actual panel will also be recorded and transcribed and will be available to you to review. My email is fabiola.bagula@sdcoe.net.
Thank you so much for doing that. I do hope everyone enjoyed our fruitful conversation. All of our panelists, you were great. And I want to go ahead and just end it by saying, you guys preached tonight. And I appreciate you guys being your authentic self and sharing your overall experience with us. I do hope that you would join us again as we continue to host other series moving forward. And you guys have been a 100% blessing to all of us. And the battle is not over. We'll have one conversation. This is one conversation. But the battle is not it is not over. And we have to continue to move forward and fight for what is just and what is right for our students and for us as educators. Equity matters, equality matters, inclusion matters, and let's do whatever we can to help close the opportunity gap to ensure that our students are being successful throughout San Diego County. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time at our next series. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lachey.